Holy shit, y'all. Am I excited for this episode? I can just feel the conduits are open. The energy is back. Flow has reemerged. Such a beautiful testament to the process, y'all. I'm so grateful that I did the episode last week when I was in the thick of the dark 50, right? The processing, the slowing down, the not feeling up in my fiery, flow filled creative self, to now be able to this week pop back on and be like, what the fuck? That was just a week ago. And it's just the most beautiful, like the ebb and the flow, right? I was in a lot of ebb these last 2 weeks. And today I just feel the flow. It was so cute. Joe worked today. I'm actually recording this on Sunday. And he called me on his way home and he could just kind of hear it in my voice. And I was like, yeah, baby, flow is back. God, and that just makes me feel so proud of living more of a divine feminine life and a divine feminine journey, which is trusting in the inherent and beautiful ebbs and flows and the cyclical nature of my life and the cyclical nature of my body. Unlike men with their 24-hour hormonal cycles, right? Mine goes over 30 days. So really just seeing and feeling a lot of gratitude at how, if you will allow the death, if you will allow the winter, spring will show back up, flow will show back up, and rebirth. And these next couple episodes are going to be that, y'all. Not only did an outline for this episode flow out of me today, but the episode for next week as well. So we are locked and loaded, ready to go. So let's dive in. Okay, so with these two episodes, I am going to be dropping into a lot more of like deep coaching topics, which I am friggin' stoked about. It's been a while since I've had this much kind of complex mental clarity come through in podcast form where I can really just give you guys some awesome downloads. So I want you guys to really buckle up with me and be prepared to digest. Let this episode, you may need to listen to both of these episodes a couple times for all the different concepts I'm going to be sharing to really get in and start digesting in you. So the episode for this week, though, is where I'm really going to be laying some key foundational groundwork pieces you'll need for next week's episode. So I'm going to focus on 3 specifically. And by no means are these the only ones or all inclusive. As I was writing this episode, I realized there are so many of these groundwork foundational pieces. But these are the 3 that were coming through this week as some of the most potent that I could share at this time. And these 3 pieces, I want you guys to know, they have been instrumental for me in my own journey. And they are definitely core aspects of what I end up teaching my clients. So to outline those for you guys, so you kind of have a roadmap of where we're going. The first one is this piece of understanding that your beliefs are what create your reality. Okay. The second one is going to be understanding the difference between power and force. And the third one, we'll be talking about vibrational frequencies of different emotional states. And I'm so excited. All 3 of these, I am totally geeking out about at the moment. So let's start with our first foundational piece that I want you guys to understand. So I remember, in fact, when I first started learning that thoughts create your results, that your beliefs create your reality, really stems back from when I first became a coach. So at the time, you guys know, back in, 2017, 2018, my best friend at the time, Kelly, was into so much self-help books, and she found the Life School podcast and she started just devouring it and then shared it with me. And this was where I really started getting boots on the ground tools to start making changes where I could see like, wow, actual results happening in my life. And the heart and soul of that, because of course, as you guys know, I then went on to actually certify through the life coach school. And in that coaching program, what they taught was this tool that Brooke Castillo created called the model. And my assistant's going to link in the show notes a couple different episodes that Brooke has from the Life Coach School podcast that will talk with you in depth about this. The model is incredible. It is such a beautiful tool. I still use it all the time. At this point, it's become just like a part of my psyche and the way I view the world. So I don't even have to use the model now as much as I just see the patterns through this lens. But the format of the model, what it shows you and what it teaches you is that we have facts in life, things that can be proven, like they're neutral, they're factual. And from those facts, we have thoughts. We think thoughts about the facts. Those thoughts create feelings. Our actions come out of those feelings, and from those actions, we get results. So the model is often listed as CTFAR, and those acronyms stand for circumstance, which I'm calling your fact, then T for thoughts, F for feelings, A for actions, and R for results. Now, why this tool that is just so beautifully simple is so powerful, and one of the biggest aha moments for me when I was learning about the model was Brooke's emphasis on the reality that, contrary to what most of us think, which is like your circumstance, okay, what are the facts of your life, that your circumstance is what has the most power. Brooke emphasized over and over that actually what creates your results is your thoughts. And hopefully in some of those episodes where she's talking about the model that we'll have linked, you'll kind of get to a better feel for why this works the way it does. But I swear, like, this is so true. Y'all, I have seen it over and over and over in my coaching over the last 4 years. And then this same idea that, thoughts create your results, beliefs create your reality. The more that you study self-help, metaphysical ideas, meditative practices, the more you realize this same idea is said a million different ways by some of the biggest thought leaders and spiritual leaders in the world. Okay, so I'm not going to spend that much time going really in depth into like building out a foundational proof for you guys on why this is true, on why, your thoughts create your results. Because hopefully you'll find more of that in Brooke's episodes where she's talking about the model. And to be honest, for me to really break all that down, I would need like a whole other episode, which I may do in the future, but that's not really where I want to go with this one. What I want you guys, though, to get is in understanding my beliefs are actually what create my reality. We start shifting out of the common way that I see the majority of the world interacting with reality and with their lives, which is most people look at what exists in their reality and they form their beliefs from that. If I were to use an example of like women I'm coaching right now, a lot of you in your marriages, you see what your marriage is like, or you see what your parents' marriages are like, or your friends' marriages, and you form the belief, well, this is what's possible. This is, I should. You don't realize there's something better out there because you've never seen it before. So you assume, well, this is all there is, so I should probably be grateful. Or, in the example of, I'm trying to think of another one just off the top of my head, but it's where we're seeing the reality in front of us and we're letting that dictate our beliefs to us instead of this really key piece of realizing my beliefs are creationary. There is power in belief, which, by the way, this is the whole idea of faith in religious traditions, that there is a power in believing in something that is creationary. Now, the heart and soul of coaching, at least the coaching I do, what makes it so powerful is this work of retrieving that amazing power that you have with your mind to choose intentionally what you want to believe, instead of just allowing the programmed beliefs or what you were taught or what your family told you or what your religion or your culture have ingrained into you to keep dictating what's possible in your life. So the key change is that we understand the beliefs are what are actually creating our reality. And we actually have power to stop letting our reality be the thing creating our beliefs. Do you guys see how it creates almost like this feedback loop for us, where when we look outside of ourselves to external reality to say, what should I believe? What's possible? Well, external reality is limited. It's limited by what we can see, what the people have done before us. And so it's finite. Okay. And so you're setting your beliefs from a finite experience, depending on where you were raised, depending on the family you were in. It can be really fucking limited. For me, for example, like being raised in a Mormon household in a very patriarchal culture, really, really limited what if I just looked at the current reality, would believe was possible for me as a woman. Okay. If I continued to just set my beliefs at what is my reality showing me, it would be like, well, the best I can ever hope to become is like a bishop's wife or a stake president's wife. And y'all, that was totally what I wanted to be. You know, I had big ambitions, but they were only within the construct of the reality that I saw around me, which was being somebody's influential's wife, being, high up in the church. I had no aspirations for myself around a career, or I never even would have dreamed of having a business, because my beliefs were not something I was picking or choosing from an internally aligned space, but were just, what do I see around me that's possible? So magic moment is when we realize, holy shit, I get to pick my beliefs. And not only do I get to pick them, but they are the thing that actually is going to create my results. And when you realize that, you start to understand, I have got to build and pick my beliefs off of what I want and not based off my current reality. Because as I was showing, if you based off your current reality, it's the whole idea of like, you're going to get what you've always had because you're picking from a pool that's only showing you a limited amount of realities. And I'm sure this is why, you guys listening to me, you can feel that energy that I have, that excitement around what's possible for your futures, because I no longer operate in a world where I base what's possible for you off of what you can see in your current reality. And that's why so many of you that get on 90-minute sessions with me and we really dive into that future you want most, it's so opening and impactful for you, because I hear about your future and I'm like, fuck yeah, that's absolutely possible. We can do that, because I have learned over the years of coaching myself, my clients, working with my own brain, that the key is to think outside of the box of my current realities, to go internally for the answers rather than using my physical senses, my sight, my touch, what I can hear to gauge what's actually possible for me. So let this sink in, y'all. You do not look at your current results and then pick your beliefs from that, because it will just keep you where you are. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always have what you've always had, right? Or you always be what you've always been, whatever that quote is. You have to expand out into belief. Belief is what actually, if you want to expand your life, if you want something different, we start with the thoughts. And when I'm saying belief, a belief is just a thought that's been practiced so many times that it begins to feel like truth for you. And to expand, right, we have to move from this outward focused, I look at other people, I look at, what other people have said is possible for me. I look to my parents for their guidance. I look to my husband for him to tell me what I can expect from life. And we instead move into the mystical world of internal trusting and feeling into these unseen knowings that we have inside. I've often called these like soul calls, right? Over what other people outside of us might tell us, or even what statistics, or this is where we really are reclaiming our authority from external sources and bringing it back to internal. So you have to have this initial seed planted, this idea that, wait, my results don't actually come from what's outside of me or what I can see, but that they come from my beliefs. Once you have planted that seed, then the journey begins. Then the expansion. I've seen it so many times. Like in coaching, this was a key moment for me where it was like, oh, whoa, now we can really go. Okay, so with that first seed planted for you all and that like step onto the pathway, which I know you guys, I mean, I've talked about this a lot, but I think for some of you, like finding the podcast for the first time, it'll just be helpful to have this reiterated. From there, though, the second key piece that I want to talk with you guys about today is understanding this idea of power versus force. And after we talk about that, I'm going to move into that third piece of the vibrational frequencies of different emotional states. And both of these pieces I find are explained really beautifully in a book by David R. Hawkins called Power versus Force. And I swear, y'all, when I read this book, I was like, oh my God, this is literally what I've been talking about in different words, in different ways, in the podcast, in my coaching for many years. But how amazing to have him actually like just put it in this framework and to make it so much clearer with the words he's using. So let's dive into the first one, which is understanding power versus force. And this is really, I want you guys to think about it when I'm describing it. I'm really describing, and when he talks about power, that's what I have been calling your soul calls and trusting your body knowings. That's that energy of power. Now, he contrasts that with this energy that he calls force. Okay, so he defines force as being this energy that's more rooted in like fear and guilt and shame, which I know this, like part of the reason I was so excited to talk about this is because so many of you are feeling those exact emotions when you are in the process of considering divorce. Like top 3 emotions, I would say, are fear, guilt, and shame when you are in this journey. The energy of force is more reactive. It's very controlling, and it is driven by external pressures. Okay. And when I say external pressures, I'm meaning like the fear we have of being judged, financial insecurities, or what other people are going to think about us. So beautiful. Now we move into this space coming out of that beliefs where I was like, it's got to be internal. Force is that energy on the outward focus. And when you are in it, it often leaves you feeling very drained and stuck in this cycle of resistance because you are having to push against the flow. Now, when I say the flow, that's what he describes as power instead. And power is this energy that is more rooted in love, truth, and courage. And when you're in it, you feel aligned and you feel steady and you feel grounded in self-trust. I want you all to take a second just now and really think about when you have felt both of these emotions. Okay. So I don't even know if I'd call them emotions. I don't think that's the best word. What would I call it? Like, these energies, let's call it that. So definitely in the process of your journey, I know you've experienced both. Absolutely. Without a doubt. I heavily went back and forth through these in my considering divorce process. And I would say moments when I felt the force energy for me actually were definitely, I used a lot of the force in trying to keep myself in the marriage for me personally, because there was a lot of trying to convince myself, a lot of wanting to control, not necessarily, Well, definitely sometimes it was me trying to control outside forces, right? Wanting my husband to change, wanting my children to change, and then a lot of controlling myself, wanting myself to change, thinking like if I could just get more grounded or more stable or more kind, then maybe the marriage would get where it needed to be. And then there were moments, though, in contrast, where I felt that energy of power, where these were often moments where I would be on my own. Maybe I can think specifically often like when I was listening to a Sarah Blondin podcast, and I would just feel this dropping into my body, this grounding into that self-trust. And this didn't mean often like the answers I was receiving in those moments of power doesn't mean they weren't like still scary to think about doing, but the energy behind them felt right. And it really, he talks about the feeling of power being something that uplifts and sustains you. I often think of it as like it calls you forward and up. And this is the key piece too, is when you make decisions from a space of power, it uplifts not only you, but those around you as well, even when those decisions are hard. So this goes back to when I talk about making decisions that change generational trauma. Okay. Those are often very hard decisions in the short term. Okay. Because they're going to make a lot of people uncomfortable, a lot of people unhappy. Humans fear change. But in the long term, it benefits you and it benefits your children and the generations to come. And in the book, he specifically speaks about power being something that is aligned with the universe's natural flow. Okay. And I love thinking of this as the image of a river. Multiple times in my journey over the years, I have had these images of myself like riding in a canoe, basically like down a beautiful Amazonian river. Okay. And you can feel like the flow of that current. And when I'm going with the flow, I can feel that power. I feel uplifted. I feel drawn. I feel steady. I feel aligned. It may mean I'm still doing hard things, but there is this grounded self-trust pushing and fueling all of it. Versus when you are in force, there is this unnatural feeling of resisting the flow. So I think of force as when you've got your canoe turned the other direction and you are like paddling upstream. Or I don't know if any of you have ever had that experience of standing in a river and, walking upstream where you're pushing against that current on your legs and you're like, woof, this is hard. And then as soon as you turn and you start moving with flow, it's almost like you're going twice as fast. Or this is just coming to me. Next time you're in an airport and you're on one of those walking, moving pathways, right? Same thing. When you turn around and you go the wrong way on that, you're walking even slower than people that are off of it, right? But if you turn around and you move with it, I love being on those things, by the way, when I'm like walking past people who aren't on it and I'm like flying, like the steps you take are almost like twice as fast as what they're taking. So this is the difference between when we are in energy of power, right? Which is where we're moving with the universe's natural flow. We're moving with where it wants to take us with those soul calls, versus force, which is where we are looking to external indicators to tell us what we need to be doing. We are fighting against the flow that we might be feeling in our body. And as we relate this like even deeper to the process of considering divorce, right? Y'all, so many of you approach this journey, it's so, because we haven't been taught to tap into that connection with the divine, to our true internal power, we often go through the considering divorce journey with so much resistance and just heavy force energy, where we feel like we need to justify everything that we're doing, or We feel like we really need to fight against ourselves and our desires. The whole, like, I need to get myself back in the box. I need to behave. What's wrong with me? Do you feel that energy where we're really trying to control ourselves in the situation? We're, plagued with the guilt, the shame, the fear in these cycles where we're just running through them, all the while kind of cranking down the pressure on ourselves. And I see this, it's like a way that we are fighting where flow might be taking us that we don't want to go because it doesn't fit our mental constructs of what we thought our life was going to be, right? Or what we thought was going to be the journey when we got married to this person. And we also feel a lot of force around too. I see this used when we don't want to accept reality, when we don't want to kind of soften in and just see what's actually here, who our spouse is, how they're actually treating us, what the connection is like, what's missing, what we actually want. We have to force ourselves to look away from those things. The act of shifting into power is an energy of choosing to move instead into a place of inner knowing. Letting yourself move through the journey with love for yourself as well, right? I see so much shame and guilt from so many of you, a real abandonment of ourselves to try and stay in the marriage. Power is when we move back into feeling that we deserve to be loved, that we deserve to also have wants and desires and needs in our life and in our relationship. And ultimately, I think one of the biggest expressions of when we've moved into power is when we start taking action from really trusting in what's true deep down for ourselves and letting that radiate out into our life. So, want you to be very aware of these two forces and, play this week with noticing, am I in an energy of power or am I in an energy of force right now? Now, I will tell you, I'm going to talk more next week about getting into the nitty gritty of how we move from these two. But for right now, we're just going to start with understanding what they are and noticing when you're in either one. So the third piece that I want to lay as foundational groundwork for us this week is this really cool idea. I've always thought of this, but I've never seen it laid out in this like map the way that David Hawkins does in this book, which is this idea of vibrational frequencies for different emotional states. So in the book, he presents this thing he calls the map of consciousness. And we're linking it in the show notes as well. Even if you just Google it, you'll find it. There's tons of images on the internet that show it. Highly recommend. It's really helpful to have a visual. But it is this logarithmic scale that he has going from 1 all the way to 1,000. And he has worked out basically these levels that represent different energetic states. So I want to take you through them. Hopefully you're maybe looking at an image or something that can help you see it. But at the bottom, you have the below 200 levels, which he considers destructive. And I don't know if I would go that far because as you guys know, I really don't like labeling negative emotions as bad or destructive, but he labels them as destructive. So we'll leave that there for right now. So one of the first ones he has is shame, and he has it at a 20. And he talks about shame being self-loathing and feelings of worthlessness. Next, we've got guilt coming in at 30. Guilt is a preoccupation with blame and regret. And then we just keep moving up. So we've got apathy at a level of 50, which is hopelessness and victimhood. We've got fear at a level 100, represented by anxiety and withdrawal. We've got anger coming in at 150, resentment and frustration. And then, so you can hear through the numbers, we're getting up to 200. At 200 and above is where he labels these emotions as constructive emotions. And it starts with courage. at 200, which is empowerment and taking responsibility for one's life. Next, I find this one fascinating. Above courage, we actually have neutrality, which is flexibility and emotional detachment. And I'll just tell you guys right now, being able to reach neutral is a key piece of coaching. Being able to realize that there are facts and then there are thoughts that we have about the facts, and realizing we can choose to be neutral about facts if we want to. Game changer. I'll also have my assistant, she's going to link, there's an episode Brooke has all about reaching neutral that'll help dive into this a little bit further. So going up from neutrality, we then have, I'm not going to give all the numbers on this because you can go look at it, but we have willingness, and then we have acceptance, and we have love coming in at 500, right? Joy above that at 540, peace at 600, and then ultimately enlightenment, which he lists as like 700 to 1,000 in these levels that he's representing as different energetic states. Okay. And he asserts in the book that the majority of humanity operates below the 200 mark. Okay. They're mainly in anger, fear, guilt, shame. And when we are in that energy, it can lead to destructive behaviors, which ultimately contributes to like the collective pain that we're all experiencing. Where, in contrast, those emotions that we are experiencing in the 200 level and above end up contributing to collective upliftment. Now, I want to dive in a little bit deeper into this all with you all. And I want to say now, whether he's got these numbers correct, okay, whether anger is, factually 150, I really don't care. That's not nearly as important to me as getting this idea that emotions have different vibrational states, and paying attention to how you operate at different levels. And as I said from the model at the very beginning, one of the key pieces that we learn as well from the model is that it is your feelings, the feelings that come out of your thoughts, that drive your actions. That is one of the most important pieces. I'm super big on feelings. I'm super big on processing emotion. It is without a doubt the feelings work. The clients that I have that do that, they make leaps and bounds more progress than my clients who just stay in the intellectual, like conscious level understanding of what we're talking about. So feelings are really fucking important. And when you can start understanding that there's kind of this gradient of different feelings that create different energetic levels, you start to understand and pay more attention to how your life operates and how you operate when you're in these different frequencies. I want to highlight for y'all some of the emotional states that you may be moving through when you are considering divorce. And I want to use some examples to show you how each state might show up. So if we're starting at the very, very base, the shame coming in at like a level of 20, definitely thoughts like, I failed at my marriage, I've made a mistake, I'm broken. These are all thoughts that are going to be creating that vibration for you. Now, let's say we move up into like a space of guilt, which is like a 30. This can come from thoughts like, I'm hurting my kids by wanting this, right? So many of you relate to this. I'm like, yeah, when I started looking at this, I was like, oh yeah, the majority for so many of you in this process of considering divorce, the majority of emotions you're going to be experiencing, if you're not doing this consciously and you don't understand what's happening and you just think emotions are happening to you, they're going to be in the below 200. And then we have like fear coming in at 100, which would be the thoughts, what will people think? Am I going to be able to make it on my own? Am I going to have enough money? Oof, so many of those. And then though, y'all, like just above fear. So fear's at 100, but we've got courage at 200. And that is the moment where we start moving into a different space. And courage, one of the thoughts that I felt like helps when it comes to the courage piece And I see this in my clients especially the one-on-one clients that I start working with. When we first start working together, we are experiencing a lot of those first emotions. And that's mainly because they are not coaching their brains. Their brains are just on autopilot, serving up what's always been there, which is usually these loops of negative beliefs, negative thoughts, creating a lot of negative emotions that just keep them kind of spiraling down in that below 200. But then when we start working together, a lot of where we start is this courage. And it comes from these beliefs like, maybe I deserve happiness, or I can do this, I can do hard things, or I can figure this out one step at a time, or I'm just going to take the next right step. Those are all beliefs that we are working together to start creating that move them vibrationally up. And then my goal, what I'm really teaching the most when I'm working with my clients, is helping them move up into these vibrations of, right, acceptance. Acceptance is a big one, like understanding, okay, this is what is, letting go of the resistance of how they really feel, accepting that this may be what their desires actually are, and then moving up into spaces of love, which is when they start having these beliefs. In fact, God, I'm thinking of one of my clients right now. She just finished up her 3 months of coaching with me, and I was blown away in the work that we did together. Just the radical change for her from at the start of that 3 months. I mean, she'd been considering divorce for a very, very long time, very narcissistic, covert narcissistic, very emotionally and mentally abusive husband, like very, very sneaky. She did not see how much abuse there was happening. And so discouraged. I mean, God, we were in so much overwhelm, guilt, shame. She had a lot of suicidal ideations coming into working with me, which I get it. When you are suffering in a marriage with that much narcissistic abuse, it's a heavy, heavy toxic load that you don't even know because you've just been in it for so long. You don't even know what it's like outside of that. But no joke, y'all, over these 3 months, she fucking sent it. She just went all in with me on coaching and changing. And I was shocked. Like at the end of our 3 months, our final session, she was meeting with me in an Airbnb that she had just moved out into and talking about how much better it was having this space. Of course, she's still going through the divorce process. She ultimately did decide to get divorced. And that, I just want to take a quick side note and say that decision was not made when we first started coaching together, because I absolutely am coming from the space of considering. But what we saw really quickly in her instance was the level of abuse that was happening. And when she was able to see and acknowledge that for herself, what came out was this courage and this feeling of like, what I really want is to leave. And it was so inspiring to see her now in this space of joy, like feeling really happy with the choice she had made with the move, getting to have this space now, and even love, which the thought I had for you guys, to kind of show you an example of how that state might show up would be the thought, I trust myself to create a life that feels good and aligned. Like her amount of self-trust skyrocketed over those 3 months as we steadily returned the right of her power to her, right? When I was saying earlier that there is a power in understanding you get to choose your beliefs, and your beliefs are what create your life. And in her instance, her husband had been, I'm just going to say it straight up, like poisoning her with a lot of terrible beliefs about herself over the years, which is very common when you are married to someone with a narcissistic way of relating. And as we worked together and we cleared those out, she just moved so quickly up into self-love, into self-trust. And I want most of all, as I'm talking about this scale, to really encourage all of you and empower all of you to recognize where you're at on the scale, okay? And remind you that you can always, always shift upward. Always. I truly believe that is the gift of being human. And I'm going to dive way more into this next week with how I'm going to actually break down in detail how the techniques I use to shift, the techniques I teach my clients. But so with that said, though, I want you guys to be really compassionate with yourselves. If in looking at the scale, you see, wow, the majority of my life right now is being spent in the under 200. And I want you guys to be compassionate because guess what? That is 100% where I lived the majority of my life just 6 years ago. Before I found coaching, that was the reality, was just constantly, my mind was super mismanaged and it was just running itself. In fact, Quinn and I were just talking about this last week of how painful it is to live a life when you don't have a well-managed mind and it just runs you ragged. And what a difference it makes when you realize, oh, I do have the power to choose my thoughts. I do have the power to choose what I want to believe about myself. Now, obviously, let me say it this way. Me saying you have the power to choose is a very, the word that's coming through is like, that sounds very luxurious. And it is like, it's a luxury that is paid for with a price. So for instance, I get to now choose my reality going forward with my beliefs because I have done substantial work to learn how to be more conscious about what I'm creating with my mind. I've learned how to be more present with my feelings and to process them. So if right now you are feeling like, well, fuck, the majority of my life is being spent in the under 200 level, and I feel absolutely like I have no choice. It's just out of my control and I am at the mercy of my life and my feelings, and they're just coming a deluge, fire hydrant style rush, and I'm really overwhelmed. It's okay. Take a deep breath and realize that's why you're here. Okay. That is the gift that coaching gave me 5 years ago when I first discovered it. And that is the gift that I'm getting to really share in this episode and in the episode to come next week, of helping you all understand, yes, it may be that way right now, and it doesn't have to stay that way. So at the end of Hawkins' book, I really loved that he takes all of this framework, which, by the way, highly recommend going and reading the book. There's a lot of other good stuff in there that I'm not including in this episode, but he makes this case for saying, this is kind of what we're here for. Like, humanity has this incredible potential to evolve up this scale into higher consciousness. And I'm going to dive much deeper into this piece in the episode next week, but he makes this case for like the importance of these individual journeys we're making of aligning with our internal truth. Because when you do, this is the other thing, when you align with those soul calls, that internal truth, what I've seen is, holy shit, have I moved up the scale in following where my soul was calling me. I, in the last year, have experienced more, God, look at those top ones, like peace, joy, love, acceptance, willingness, enlightenment. Like, that is the majority of my life now. I think I said this in the last episode, where 95% of my life was a lot of just the trauma of the under 200 emotions. I now maybe 20% of the time get down into those. And I don't see that either as like a, ooh, bad, I need to get out of them. But I just see that as, oh, there are still parts of me that are needing reclaiming, that are needing that reclamation of bringing them back into alignment with me and what I truly am, having come from a world that trained me to be so disconnected from myself, so far away from the divine feminine and what's like really my truth. So I keep hinting at next week's episode because there's so much that I'm going to talk to you about that journey. But just know if there are like questions that you have, or like, oh my God, well, how, it's coming. It's coming, y'all. So I want to close out by really giving you guys like a few key takeaways from his book to just kind of encapsulate it. So one of the things that I love that he emphasized is that consciousness is the key to transformation. Okay. Not only in the like bigger collective way, but in our personal lives as well. And for me, this is not how he interprets it, but this is how I interpret it. Consciousness, when I define that, I define it as understanding that you're the meaning maker. Understanding that there's this incredible creative source of power in you with your thoughts and your beliefs, and that, okay, maybe you don't have the tools right now, right, to do it, but you can get the tools to take that power back. And once you have that back, you can always, always, always choose again. Literally this just yesterday, y'all, coming off of all that abandonment, depression, coming back up, doing a lot of emotional processing, I found myself once again sitting in this space of examining my current beliefs. And I was beautifully shocked and surprised to be like, oh shit, there's a lot of power I'm leaving on the table right now in not being intentional with a lot of my thoughts. I definitely slipped into, and it can kind of happen when you get triggered, right? Through the CPTSD into that old pattern of looking at my reality and building my beliefs off of that. So seeing the conflict with my son right now, and instead of choosing intentionally to believe I'm a good mom, seeing the conflict and going, oh my God, that must mean I'm a bad mom, and reinforcing that belief and letting the conflict with him reinforce that over and over. Or I'll just give you another small example. Lately, I've really noticed myself believing I hate cooking. I don't want to be in the kitchen. And I'm reinforcing it with all of these thoughts. And I realized yesterday as I was sitting with it, I was like, why am I choosing to believe that? That is such a shitty belief that is getting me exactly what I don't want, which is hating more and more cooking and hating being in the kitchen. And that I can softly, gently find that part that's really in resistance to that right now, connect with it, and then find what I want to believe instead, which ultimately what I want to believe instead is, food nourishes my body. I love nourishing my body, and I love being in the kitchen with my children, teaching them how to nourish their bodies. Do you feel the difference in those energies? I can feel even there in that little, what you guys got to see right there is just like a tiny snapshot of what I'm going to teach next week, which is that process of identifying I'm stuck in a belief I don't want. What do I want instead? And then doing the process of being with the emotions, working through them, and then finding the new belief. And I'm practicing and leaning into creating that new reality through the new belief. Now, real quick, another key takeaway that I loved is that he talks about how truth and love, okay, these like much higher vibrations, that they have exponential power to counterbalance negativity in the world. And I'm obsessed with this thought. Y'all, I'm obsessed. Because, if the feeling of peace comes in at a vibrational level of like 600, that is massive in comparison to feelings of shame coming in at 200. Like if we take love coming in at 500 and shame's coming in at 200, that's like over a 25 times power registering in love. And so he makes this point, which I find so inspiring, because literally, this morning I just have been saying ever since the election, y'all, I cannot go near the news. It's not that I can't go near, it's that I consciously choose not to. I'm like, I don't have a desire to let that kind of drama into my life. But I happened to see something, did peek in I just felt so discouraged, down into the feelings of fear pretty quickly. And I came back to reminding myself, when I think, oh my God, I may not be able to change who the president is. I can't influence all of these big, big, huge world events happening. But what I do have power over is my vibrational energy and beliefs, and coming back into his idea that a person operating in their journey at a level of 500 is offsetting the pain of thousands of other people in the world. Each time you experience levels of enlightenment, each time you experience levels of peace or joy or love, you are changing the world. You are counterbalancing all of that negativity. And that's what makes the numbers actually work in my mind, right? I'm like, oh my God, okay, so you can have thousands of people in the energies of shame and fear, but those are much smaller numerical levels than just one person actively, regularly being in the space of peace over and over. And then I was like, okay, all right, we're going to be okay. The world's going to evolve. We're going to keep moving forward. And it really grounded me back into like my own personal journey. And I hope it grounds you back into your own personal journey as we do our personal journeys, moving into this higher consciousness, into these higher levels. We do that through letting go of what I really think are like the egoic attachments, which would be that energy of like force. The ego thinks it's got to, my life's got to look a certain way and I've got to be a certain person. When we let go of those egoic attachments and instead we move into aligning with our inner truth, with the power that we can feel coming through us that's guiding us into what the universe wants for us, like, damn, y'all, that's when the world really starts changing. So one final piece too, just because I know your brains can do this, I really, when you're looking at this list, please do not move into a space of judging yourself if you are finding you are in a lot of the lower vibrations. Okay? Because that was literally where I was last week, right? In last week's episode. So it is not a problem. You are not bad. There is not something wrong with you. You are not somehow failing the universe by being in these lower feelings. And next episode is where I will explain more fully what I believe the process is and the incredible journey that those lower feelings call us on, that those darker emotions bring us into if we will come towards them with compassion and understanding and curiosity. Okay, till next week, though, I really cannot recommend enough my 90-minute sessions. Once again, we've got that fun, easy text that you can send. You can text 90min, that's 90min to the number 33777, and it'll take you directly to our scheduling link. Y'all, as I was doing this episode, I was thinking about my 90-minute sessions, and I was like, fuck yeah, this is exactly what we end up doing on those sessions. I have women get on those sessions with me, and within those 90 minutes, we shift vibrationally up through so many levels, big time in these sessions. It's wild how quickly we can make a shift when they get on with me and we do this gorgeous before and after process. It's really, really special. So if you've been on the fence considering, definitely go text 90min to 33777 and it will take you right through. I have a couple of you this week already that are on my schedule. Hi, I can't wait to see you and meet you in person. I'm always so stoked when I get on those. Also, I've been thinking, and I wanted to make sure that I mentioned this on the podcast, that those of you that are considering coaching with me one-on-one, I've been working with a business coach and we realized like this is the starting point, this 90-minute session. So from here on out, anyone that I end up taking on to do one-on-one coaching with will always go through a 90-minute session with me first. And that's because that session is really, it's incredible for me getting to go really deep and see where you're at. And I really know after that if I can help you or not. So if you are someone wanting to actually go into the deep 3-month container of coaching with me one-on-one, I want you to make sure and be putting in your note when you go to schedule that session, you get to leave a little note telling me kind of where things are at. Always make sure and give me a heads up like, hey babe, I'm wanting to coach with you one-on-one, because that'll help me in that session to really be considering and feeling into that energy of taking you on as a one-on-one client and letting you know at the end if that's a fit or not. Also, in other guys, we just have so many exciting things happening. I'm just so excited. Hell yeah to 2025. The community is growing, y'all. I had more women join these past few weeks. And a little shift there is that originally I thought I was going to hold off and have people apply and then like let you all come in at the start of each month. but I'm actually finding I just want you to have the help you need right now. So we've switched that. Once the application is complete and accepted, I am, taking people just right into the community, and you just get to start rocking and rolling with everybody. And, I thought I think each month with the community, I'm just blown away even more by what's possible there. This last month, I've seen just the women in the community getting even closer and really opening up. I mean, it's so authentic and vulnerable and real in there. Sometimes I have to pinch myself because I get on these calls and that's just my reality. I'm so used to coaching all of you. I'm so used to speaking so openly about all of this that I realize, like, oh my God, for some of you, for some of these women in the community, this is the one space in their life where they're actually being their full, honest, like, this is me, not wearing any masks self. And damn, is it such an honor to curate and facilitate this space. So, I'm just like, and there's more, and there's more. In other super exciting news, specifically related to the community, is there is going to be, this next month, there is going to be a workshop that we will have our first ever guest in. I'm going to talk more about her next week, but her name is Allison Alexander, and I am so excited. Y'all know I've been wanting to have guests in the community facilitating workshops. She's going to get to do that next month. And then we are also going to be recording a podcast episode that will drop next month as well. So like, hell yeah, y'all. So many amazing things coming through in the community, in the podcast, collaborating. The dream is coming through. I am so delighted to be doing it with all of you. Also, please, I would love, don't forget to go rate the podcast. My assistant, Alex, it was so cute. She edits all of my podcast episodes. And just last week, she got on and was telling me how a new review had come through, and just it inspiring her and her feeling so proud of what she is also. I mean, she is a huge behind the scenes part of my business and making this vision come to life, and her seeing that just really motivated her. So thank you for those of you that have. If you'd like to, we would love to hear more reviews. It helps the podcast, get better ratings and more people find us. And definitely, if you haven't already subscribed, make sure and subscribe so that you're notified every week, right? Now that I'm posting every week, I just have to also say hell yeah to that. I've been hearing from so many of you that that's really making a huge difference. So I'm really proud that that's a goal I'd set coming out of last year, shifting my focus, and it's happening, y'all. So make sure and subscribe so that you get notifications when the new episodes drop. And that's all for today. I will see you all next week when we dive even deeper. Mwah, my loves.